Hey everybody, Ed Homewood, Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. Hope everyone's doing well today. Today should be, I think, an interesting video. We're going to talk about the Youlong Daart D39 DAC, and it's a very interesting piece. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and I'll explain what's going on with this thing. Well, before we get started, big shout out to the folks at Apos Audio. Apos was kind enough to send me the Youlong Daart D39 along with the Youlong Daart A39 headphone amp. As you can see, they're a nice matchup. I'll do this review later, but they were kind enough to send me the unit. Now, they did send me the unit, but all of my conclusions, opinions, and my review information is all my own. So what is the Youlong Daart D39? Well, it is a $939 music streamer DAC, and it's an interesting piece. I'll put specs up here. The basics are, and basic features are, it's built around an ESS Sabre 9039 Pro DAC chip, but it has an interesting function, and Youlong has put some of their own secret sauce into this DAC, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I wasn't that familiar with the Youlong brand, and I believe that the Daart designation, or the Daart sub-brand, is their premium product line, because this is a very premium, well-built product. But again, using that 9039 chip, Youlong has put in this bypassable, what they call bypassable ASRC, or asynchronous rate converter. Now, you can bypass the internal ASRC function of the DAC chip and decode the native audio sample rates directly. That's interesting in that it takes an extra step out, an extra processing step out, and theoretically can improve the sonic quality. We're going to talk about the sound of all of this in my summary. They also use in this FPGA, and I'm going to do a little bit of a discussion. I'm going to talk about that chip just a little bit because I kind of found it fascinating. I'm going to talk about FPGAs kind of in general and then specific application to this particular DAC, because Youlong puts this, what they call JIC, or Jitter Interface Control, and it really is interesting in how it handles the asynchronous USB signal, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. It also uses a dual-core CPU running a custom Linux program. That's fascinating. You don't see a lot of DACs that are using a dual-core CPU. Some use an ARM processor, and that can run Linux, Android, it can run a lot of different things. But having a dual core is interesting because there's a lot of things going on, because this also has a built-in master clock. I think that's really cool. It's got a built-in word clock, and you can input and output. So you can use an external clock with this, or you can use this as an external clock to another device. And I did, and I'll talk about that a little bit. It is a streamer. Now, I don't have hardwired network into my media room down here, so I couldn't utilize those functions, but it does support AirPlay 2, DLNA, Rune Bridge, HQNAA, Spotify, Squeeze Light, and a couple other functions. There's more information on the website about that. And again, I don't do that down here because I don't have hardwire, although I'm contemplating getting something like a Mocha network down here. The USB input supports 32-bit 768 and up to DSD 1024. And on PCM, Toslink or coax 24192 and DOP 64. It is not MQA rated. Like, who cares, right? It does have a really nice internal layout. Now, I'm going to show you the front. I'm going to show you the back like I always do. I cannot open this thing up. I tried. I don't want to ruin it. It's not mine. I don't want to get it to a point where I can't do anything with it. So I have a picture of the interior, and I'll talk about it, and then I'll put little arrows when I'm talking about all that other stuff. Beautiful chassis. And the other nice thing is, as you saw in the Apos intro, it has a matching headphone amp that goes with it, and that was a nice combination, but again, that's going to be a different review. So let's do this. Let me take a moment. I want to talk about the front and back panel, and then I want to talk about the inside. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about the chip, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the FPGA. We're going to go over some music. I'm going to summarize, and then we'll get the heck out of here. This might be a little bit long, and I apologize for that. Well, here we are looking at the front panel of the Daart D39. Now, I didn't take the little plastic piece off that covers the LCD screen because it's not my unit. It does have an infrared sensor, but in the boxes for the D39 and A39 that I received, the review samples, there was no remote control, so maybe it got lost with another reviewer. We have the encoder, and I'm going to zoom in and show you a little bit closer view of the menu itself, but it's push button and rotate. So give me a second to reset. We're going to zoom in on that display. Well, here we are looking at the front panel. I apologize. I'm not going to peel off the little gizmo here to take it off the LCD screen. It's not mine to use. You see I've got it set in the VU meter display, but along the bottom you'll see a number of different choices. So right now I'm going to push the encoder and it's going to come up USB, and that lets me change to network connection, coax connection, optical, or back to USB. If I push it again, I go to pure DAC, or I can be a preamp. So this can be a line level unit, or it can be a preamp if you want it to be. If I push it again, I can come over here, and this accesses the digital filter. So minimum slow, minimum low phase, minimum phase, linear apodizing, linear fast, linear slow, so forth. If I push it again and come over here, this is the sync, and this allows me to do the asynchronous sample rate converter either on or off. I apologize. So it's syncing now, or I can turn it off. And then if I come over, it'll show the volume display. If it was preamp, volume's down here. So now if I push and hold, it takes us into the menu system. And I apologize, this thing goes out of the menu system so fast. So I can have the screen on always. I can have it be VU meters or a spectrum display. I can have the spectrum display be lines or curves. I can set up my network. I can do my Rune connection, my DLNA, AirPlay 2, HQ player, NAA, Squeeze Light, Spotify, change the filters, output level at 2.4 volts or 3 volts. I can adjust the word clock for mode, whether it's 10 megahertz or 44.1. Infrared sense set. I guess there's two different settings for the IR, so if you're using this with a headphone amp, it's not going to control both. You can have it just control this. Language setting, English or Chinese. Restart the unit, restore the factory defaults, or learn about the firmware version. So again, push and hold. It should come back out to the VU meters. And then if I push and hold, there's no off switch here on the front. So in the back, when we look, you'll see that there's an on and off switch. So anyway, that's a look at the display on the D39. Well, here we are looking at the back panel of the Dart D39. So we're going to start on the right-hand side, IEC power socket, master power switch, RJ45 jack for wired networking, BNC connector for the internal clock output or input. And you set that in the menu as you saw. USB-B for asynchronous USB, SPDIF coax, SPDIF toslink, balanced out, single-ended out, simple, clean, gets down to business. So that's the back panel. That's a look at the back panel of the Dart. So now we're going to switch around and we're going to talk about the inside. Well, as you can see from looking at the front panel, the menu, it's a little hard to see. The meters are nice, but they're small. On your desktop, it's fine. But I used it in the big system, and I'll talk about that when I tell you how I tested it. But it's got some good functions. It's got some good ability in the menu system without question. Back panel, nice feature set. It doesn't have I2S, which I don't know is a big deal because it has an internal word clock that it's relying on, or you can use the word clock for external connections, or you can connect maybe a more powerful word clock to this and have that do the timing. So nice feature set. Now let's talk about the inside. Now I apologize, I'm not going to be able to see the picture I'm putting here for you guys. I have it on the screen here, so I'm going to talk about it, but you're going to see little red arrows pop up when I'm discussing a particular section of the board. So as you look at that now, as it's popped up, you'll notice on the left-hand side, there are two toroidal transformers. There's a full linear power supply. One transformer handles the digital side of things. The other transformer handles the analog side of things. Now, next to that, you'll see a long series of heat sinks, and that is the multiple set. That's the high current linear power supply itself being fed by those transformers. You'll see it's got a lot of good buffering, a lot of capacity in capacitance and things like that for a good solid power supply. Now up above, where you'll see at the top in the center, you'll see a gold RCA connector and you'll see a silver BNC connector. Below that, you'll see the CPU optimized power supply. So the power supply is being regulated by that dual core CPU. I think that's fascinating because that means very, very precise voltage controls. And again, very low noise voltage, going through the circuit. So it's not adding any potential distortion or interference with what's going on in either the digital or analog sections of the unit itself. Now, next to that, just to the right and below where the XLRs are, just kind of on the right side of the top, you'll see the Youlong JIC. That's the FPGA. That's the jitter interface control. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit about FPGAs because they're kind of fascinating. And it's going to, FPGAs are, you've heard me talk about them before. It's a very common thing in more expensive, better built DACs, and I want you guys to understand kind of what it does. Now below that you'll see an area, and hopefully you can read the markings, and there'll be a red arrow pointing to it anyway. The ESS 9039 DAC section with OPA 1612, TI OPA 1612, high precision, high speed op amps there. And then just below that is the audio output, and that is 140 milliamp buffer. So all of that combined gives this thing a very well laid out, as you can see, well designed, really well executed circuit board, and it has some distinct benefits. So let's do this. What I'd like to do, if I could, is let me really quick tell you about the chip itself, the ESS 9039. I want to talk about the FPGA. We're going to go into how I tested it, a couple of tracks I used. I'm going to summarize, and I promise I'll get you out of here before lunch. Well, for testing this unit, I did use it on the desktop. I did use it with the matching headphone amplifier, and you'll see the review of that later. But honestly, because this was, the technology involved in this and some of the things that Youlong is doing to it that's kind of unique to their product, I put it in the big system. I had it in there, and I had it connected to all the really high-end stuff that I have, all the best. I wanted to run this thing through the mill, and I did. So, obviously I stream from Autovana. I always run through a USB isolator. I ran into the DAC via USB, and I used it that way for most of the review. Now, to do a little additional testing, I did run it through a couple of different DDC reclockers. I did, for a brief moment, I used a little SMSL PO100 Pro. But I really, for the most part, I used the Singer SU2, and for a time I did use my Matrix X SPDIF 3. Now I own both the Singer and the Matrix. And I was able to use the Singer, which does have the ability to send a clock signal out, and I thought I'd try that. And what I did was I wound up using the clock on this to go into that. And I used the clock, and this was fascinating. I used the clock output on this to go into the SMSL PL200T CD transport, the top load unit. That's got a clock input. And you'll see on the display, you'll get the clock signal indication. And I think I heard a difference, very subtle, but I think I heard a difference, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the summary. So again, I ran this thing through the mill. I used it with all the best stuff, the Pearl Acoustic 7040 amp. I used it with the big Martin Logan speakers, the TAD speakers. I used it with the Magnapans. I used it with the CSS Creightons. I used it with the Jamie Audio i602s. I even used it with the, I ran the DAC into, through the Advanced Paris A12, and I used it to test the Buchart SP300s. I used it to test, and you'll see one of them right here, Lukaczewski's LC1 speakers. So I really gave this thing a workout because I found it to be very fascinating. But before I tell you my final thoughts on it, let's go over some of the music I used real quick, and then we'll get on with it. So for all the music I used in this, you'll find it in the playlist called DAC and DDC Test Tracks, and there'll be a link to the Qobuz version and the title version in the video description. I'm not going to link the individual tracks. You'll find them in the playlist. So the first track I used was this track called Fever from Malia and Boris Blank of Yellow. Now, Malia is a very excellent singer. Now, Fever is an old classic. It was originally written and recorded in 1956 by Little Willie John, and it was covered by Peggy Lee. She had the most famous cover of this particular track, and it is a very sultry jazz pop. This Malia is a very sultry jazz pop reinterpretation of this song. This is a very suggestive, very torchy kind of song. Very seductive, very sensual, very interesting. Now, this interesting blend of Malia's amazing voice and Boris Blank's crazy electronic atmospheres and backgrounds and music and all this other stuff that's going on, this really breathed new life into this, what is really part of the classic American jazz songbook. Malia's voice is beautiful. This is an amazing recording, by the way. Malia's voice is just amazing. Now, as is every engineer seems to want to do. They always put a little bit too much reverb. I don't think she needs it, but it sounds fascinating and it sounds wonderful. And she just kind of breathes new life into this standard. This is like I said, this is a very sensual, very sultry song. You know, you give me fever when you kiss me, you know, that kind of lyric. It's just so suggestive, and it's beautiful. And then you know, with Boris Blank's, you know, arrangement of this, there's this kind of hushed modern beats, there's ambient layers, there's kind of a lot of electronic flourishes, there's this really good kind of bass line, this groove running through it. It is really a sophisticated blend of jazz, very elegant jazz vocals, and you know, Boris Blank's really incredible signature electronic ambience. It just makes the song very alluring and contemporary, but yet it still has that classic feel to it. It is just beautiful. So let's talk about the next track. So the next track I used is from an artist. It's actually a solo project called Napos, and it's called Smooth Funk. Now, Napos is a solo project by Italian guitarist and composer Gianluca Ferrero, and it was released in 2011 on an album called Happiness Volume 1. And the track kind of lives up to that album title name. It's this very silky blend of funk and jazz fusion and kind of smooth groove elements. It's an interesting track in that you can just have it playing in the background and it'll just kind of keep you smoothed out. But if you listen closely, there's some interesting, fun stuff going on. So this solo project by Gianluca Ferrero, Napos, is known for marrying very strong musicianship with kind of this very playful, genre-bending kind of arrangements. Smooth funk is a great example of it. It is built on a very tight, syncopated rhythm section. The track features really crisp rhythm guitar work, and Gianluca Ferrero is a very great guitarist. It's got this kind of a round melodic bass line, light touches of a Rhodes piano, and I love the sound of a Rhodes piano, a Fender Rhodes. It gives it kind of a polished, retro, kind of futuristic vibe. The guitar work is just super clean. It's understated. More about groove than it is about flash. It just kind of keeps this forward momentum, this kind of propulsive momentum, and it just carries through. And he's got this really kind of very finesse, you know, kind of signature finesse style that he has. There's a very subtle use of effects and kind of production textures that helps the track just kind of glide along, you know, very much like a George Benson track or a Marcus Miller, or even maybe some of the acid jazz from JK from Jamiroquai. It's a really interesting piece. I found it very fascinating. Again, it's great for background if you're multitasking, you're trying to just chill, but if you want to focus on it, you can, and there's some really interesting stuff going on, and sonically there's some interesting stuff going on. It's a really good recording. So let's do this. Let's talk about the final track I used. Well, the final track I used is from the trio Bazio, Levin, and Stevens, and it's a track called Duende. Now, this is a really interesting group. This is off the trio's 1997 album Black Light Syndrome, and they're a progressive rock supergroup rock trio. So you've got drummer Terry Bazio, you've got bassist Tony Levin, and you've got guitarist Steve Stevens. And this album is really notable in that every song on the album is improvised compositions. They may have had some sort of concept about where they wanted to go with it, but it was totally improvised. And I know this isn't necessarily a fair comparison, but the way to think about it is, you think about Miles Davis' Kinda Blue. He had just kind of some thematic outlines, and when they got in the studio, everybody just did what they thought fit in with the kind of general overall themes. Now, I don't know if that's the case here, but completely improvised compositions, and it was recorded over just 4 days. It really shows these guys' exceptional musicianship, synergy, and inventiveness, and improvisational skills. This stands out, this track, Duende, stands out. It's an acoustic flamingo-inspired piece, and it's primarily driven by Steve Stevens' really expressive guitar work. He is a great guitarist. The track it captures the essence of kind of the Spanish term duende, which refers to a heightened state of emotion and or authenticity in art. It's kind of an elevated state of kind of awareness. The composition's intricate guitar passages are complemented by Bazio's very subtle percussion and Levin's amazingly resonant bass lines. It creates this kind of dynamic and evocative soundscape. And again, it just kind of moves along. There's this you know, the bass line just gives us this propulsion, this forward motion that's just interesting. So the piece is characterized by very fluid transitions, shifting tempos, a blend of Latin rhythms and kind of progressive elements. Really kind of offers a distinctive voice within the album's very diverse musical explorations. There's a lot. This is an album you've got to look into, Blacklight Syndrome. Now, I hate to say this, and I avoid it. You guys will know I never do any like Norah Jones or Diana Krall stuff. I don't normally fall for this audiophile recording, but I will tell you, this is an amazing album from a sound and recording quality standpoint. So yeah, I would call it audiophile. It will give your system a real test. It is amazing. It is not compressed. It's not EQ'd. There's no overdubs. There's no punch-ins. There's no manipulation. It is just raw. What they performed is what you get, and it was recorded beautifully. This is really a remarkable example of improvisational artistry in contemporary progressive rock, and I encourage you to listen to the entire album. It is remarkable. So now that I've done blabbing on about music, let me give you my final thoughts and I'll get you the hell out of here. So the Youlong Daart D39. This is a fascinating DAC to me. And I think it is, most of my regular viewers will know I've never been a big fan of ESS Sabre DACs. I've referred to Sabre Glare. And I think ESS has addressed that, and I think, because I'm not the only one that said that, and I think this new DAC chip with this new, what they call Time Domain Jitter Eliminator 2, it's designed to improve the timing accuracy of the signal and reduce harshness caused by jitter in digital signals. I think also, too, they've improved their low-pass filters. All Delta Sigma DACs have to oversample. So typically, in the case of ESS, and I'm not exactly sure on this particular DAC chip, it can only process 1 bit at a time, and it oversamples at 256 times. Now, there are some other schemes that don't do that, but I'm talking about an ESS chip. I think what ESS has done with this particular chip has got their low-pass filter, their switch, to get that switching noise, that 256 times oversampling switching noise out of the signal. They've done a really good job with it, and I didn't detect. The only time I ever detected any kind of what I would refer to as Sabre Glare, and I don't know that it was Sabre Glare other than just very detailed, was when I used it with an entirely solid state system. So typically, and recently, I've had a bunch of tube preamps in, you know, the Rogue RP5, the Black Ice F360, and the Audible Illusions Modulus M3B. And I've been running those with a series of Class D GANFET monoblocks, regular Class D Hypex Encore X monoblocks, and a Purify 7040 amp, the Pearl Acoustics 7040 amp. Now, I also have in the Junsong JA1 preamp 30th edition and the matching big 80 watt Class A amplifier. I think I forget what the model number is off the top of my head. I'll put it down here. Those just came in, but that preamp is a full solid state preamp, so it's a detailed piece to begin with. And this DAC with that, if you're a detail fan, I'm telling you, solid state preamp or a solid state integrated, a good one, and this, you'll get all the detail you'd ever hope for. Now, on a speaker like the Jamie Audio i602, which tends to be a very detailed, it's smooth, but it can be very detailed. It was amazing the detail you get. You put this with a good detailed speaker, and I mean, if you're a big detail fan, man, this thing will deliver in spades. Now, paired up with the right, and it's all synergy, remember? And again, there's no best, there's different flavors. I think I said it in another review, if you give 3 chefs the exact same ingredients and ask them to cook a dish, what are you gonna get? You're gonna get 3 different dishes. They can all taste great. They all use the same ingredients, but they're all good. There's no best. And in all of this audio stuff, there's no best. There's just different flavors, and it depends on the flavor you like. And my flavor may be different than your flavor. I found this performed exceptionally well when I used it with the A12 Classic, which of course is a Class A front end, preamp with a tube buffer and a big dual mono monster amp, 200 watt per channel amp on the back end. That was a good combination running into the Martin Logans or running into the TADs. Now, using the F360 with the Pearl Acoustics 7040, That was an amazing combination, and I found that, again, on the Martin Logans, the Magnapan, not on the Magnapans, excuse me, the TADs, the Wharfdales, the CSS Crichtons, that was an amazing combination with good detail. Now, the CSS Crichton 3 TDX is a little bit soft on the top end. This brought a little bit extra detail in there and just kind of was a very good synergy right there. So anyway, overall, this with the solid state preamp and a solid state amp or a solid state integrated on the Martin Logans was on the Magnapans was a magic combination. Little extra detail in the LRS pluses is a good thing. That was a very good combination. So overall sonics on this, great bass, very fast. This is a cool sounding DAC. It is not, there's not much warmth in it, but there's a lot of detail and it's very crisp and very clean and very articulate and very fast. Bass was very good, deep, articulate, all of those other things. Mid-range, good attack, good speed. Drum kits and you know, attack on toms and snares sounded proper, if a little cool. Vocals were well reproduced. It was good texture, and depending on the recording, you could get some good richness in it, like on the Malia recording. Her voice is very rich. But again, on the cool side of things. Mid-range was very well detailed. Again, cool. High frequencies, really good detail in the high frequencies, good transients, good decays. The leading edges and notes might have been just a little sharper, but I found it to be very pleasant and very listenable. I had no issues with this, except with a full solid state system. With a cold sounding system, it was a little much, but just very, very nice. High marks for this one. This was an excellent implementation. It kind of opened my eyes and made me maybe be more willing to give an ESS DAC, especially the 9039 series and what comes next after that, more of a chance and more of a fair opportunity, and give them a good, honest listen. So anyway, that's the Youlong Daart D39. Well, before we wrap up, again, big shout out to Apos Audio for sending me this product to review. Again, they sent the product, but all of my opinions and everything else are my own. Well, hopefully you enjoy the video. Hopefully be willing to give me a like and your subscription. That would help a great deal. Your view also counts a great deal. I'd like to thank my channel members, my viewers, and my subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all your support. There will be, in the spirit of full disclosure, there will be an Apos affiliate link for this product in the pinned comment and in the video description if you are interested in purchasing one. I'd appreciate it if you use that link. It doesn't affect how much you pay or your ability to return a product if you're not happy with it. There will also be in the pinned comment and video description a link to channel membership if you'd care to join. If you want to support the channel and you're watching on a portable device or your computer, at the bottom of the video window is a thank you button. You can use that if you wish to, so thank you for your support in advance. There will be a title and co-buzz link to the playlist, DAC and DDC test tracks that I used for this particular review. There are also some additional affiliate links in the video description. There is a link to the Community Post playlist. Please check it out. There's some great music. There's some wonderful music there, as a matter of fact. Comment. Let me know what you think. Am I starting to soften? Is my hatred for Sabre DAC starting to wane? Yeah, I think it might be. This was a good one. I really enjoyed this. Anyway, comment, let me know your thoughts on all of this. I think I've covered all the bases on this particular one, the Youlong Daart D39. Fascinating piece. Anyway, like, subscribe, comment. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to. My name is Ed Homewood. This is, of course, the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. And you know what I'm going to say next? It is your obligation to yourself, your duty, to put on some beautiful music, sit back, relax, and just let the cares of the day waft away with the breeze, and just to relax and enjoy yourself. Thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful for it. I hope you have a wonderful day.